and today I'm here to review the KZ DQ6. Full disclosure, the KZ reptilian overlords did not threaten to lock me in your mum's basement if I gave a negative review, so this is my honest opinion. Don't hurt me, KZ masters. What's cracking, audio fans? It's David here from Prime Audio Reviews. So I'm here with the KZ DQ6. Now this is a $25-ish earphone or in-ear monitor. It is actually a triple dynamic driver setup, so it's a little bit unusual. It has one 10mm dynamic driver and two 6mm dynamic drivers for a total of 87 drivers. Yes, I'm that good at math. Pretty average KZ box, nothing unusual about that, but we're used to that and it's perfectly fine. So let's now have a look at the DQ6 earphone and we'll come in for a closer look. Okay, so here's a closer look at the shell now, the DQ6. First of all, you can see it's got the Type-C 2-pin connectors there. We've got an aluminium faceplate with the KZ logo kind of etched into it. There is a horizontal sort of a vent there, but I don't think it's an actual vent. I think it's just there for aesthetics. But overall, the faceplate is pretty nice. It doesn't get fingerprints. It doesn't attract fingerprints, and yeah, it has a nice smooth semi-matte finish. I think it looks good. And then there is the shell, which is an acrylic shell. There are a couple of different colors available. I can't remember what the other ones are, but I know one has got a clear, like fully transparent shell, and that lets you see the three drivers inside. You can't really see them through this sort of dark, smoky colored one, but they are in there. One thing I'm not really keen on about the build is the thinner than average diameter of the nozzle here. Now, for some of my larger ear tips, the core is just a little bit too wide for this nozzle, so I had to hunt around a little bit more than normal to find a suitable pair of ear tips, and I settled on the mandarin ears here. I think that's what they're called. They sit on there nice and firmly and they don't rotate around the nozzle, so they are perfect. So in terms of comfort, this shell works for my ears really well. It is much better than the ASF and AXS shells, which were huge. I should have had one out for comparison, but they're in a box over there. But yeah, these are much smaller than the ASF, ASX shells, much more comfortable as well, and I'm kind of happy to wear these all day long pretty much without any issues or discomfort. So build quality is great, comfort is great, and I think they look pretty sweet too. For the cable, you get the new default KZ standard cables, the silver plated copper. Not great, not terrible, just fine. You can't expect too much for 25-ish bucks, but it is a pretty decent cable overall. And with that said and out of the way, let's move on to the most important thing, which is of course the sound. And how does the DQ6 sound? Well, you might be surprised when you hear triple dynamic driver. You're probably thinking, man, how about that bass? But in reality, the DQ6 here has a pretty balanced signature. And remember, balance does not mean neutral. It just means that the bass, the mid-range, and the treble are all fairly even on a fairly level plane. But the levels are definitely boosted well above neutral. So let's start with the bass now. And man, I really like the bass on this DQ6. It is slightly skewed more towards the sub bass than the mid bass. So if you're someone who really likes a fat mid bass punch, these might not give you that. They're kind of a little bit more tame when it comes to mid bass, but then they've got this fantastic deep reaching sub bass that gives a nice rumble. It's not huge, it's not massive, but it just feels so self-assured. It feels authoritative, and it is absolutely one of my favorite aspects of the DQ6 is the bass, and I think they've done a fantastic job with that 10mm dynamic driver. So the bass has got this nice impact. It's fairly fast, but it's got a nice natural weight to it. It is just magnificent in my opinion. So let's move on to the mid-range now. And the mid-range, you know, KZ, I might say slightly recessed, but I wouldn't even call it recessed. They have a very mild V-shape, and the mids are not really pushed back whatsoever. They're fairly up front. Vocals sound really nice on these. There's no graininess to them. They are rich and full-bodied, but yet at the same time they're nice and articulate. They're nice and clear. This isn't the most ultra clear set like the ASF, for example, which by the way sounded horrible in my opinion, but the mid-range is a little bit warmer here, but still have good clarity. Not ultra clear, but much more natural sounding and a little bit more musical, sort of less like laying back in a dentist chair and more like walking through an open field kind of sound. If that makes any sense to you at all, it probably doesn't. But overall, the mid-range on these is really nice. Female vocals sound nice and clear, but they're never shrill, they're never harsh. And one surprising thing about the sound of the DQ6 is the amount of detail it renders, considering that the treble, which we'll get to in a moment, but considering the treble is, for the most part, fairly relaxed, these render a really good amount of detail, and even better than a lot of those ultra bright, ultra clear, or more expensive IEMs fail to pick up. The DQ6 has no problem, so it's quite impressive in that regard. But overall, it's got a great mid-range, clear, smooth, and musical. And finally, that leaves us with the treble. And like I said, the treble is, I wouldn't call it laid back. It's slightly relaxed, I guess you could say. It does have peaks at around 5 kilohertz and 7 kilohertz, and they can be a little bit forward at times, especially when you sort of pump up the volume. They kind of seem to extend a bit further and can be just a little bit sharp. But for the most part, the treble is slightly warm. And as I just mentioned a moment ago, the treble does allow for some really good detail retrieval. It is quite precise at picking up little minute sounds in the music that you might not notice with some other earphones. And yeah, considering the kind of slightly warm overall tonality of the DQ6, the detail retrieval is fantastic. I love that. And I like the treble too. Like I said, airy, fairly smooth, just the right mix of energy and comfort for me anyway. I think it's really well done, and I hope to see more similar treble tunings like this in future releases from KZ. So how do I feel about the KZ DQ6? Well, to sum up, I really love that bass. It is fantastic. I love the fullness and slight amount of warmth in the mid-range, but the clarity that's still maintained there. And I like the smoothness of the treble, but really impressed with the amount of detail that it can pick up. And overall, I think for 25-ish bucks, this is a really nice earphone. It might even end up on my recommended list on the website. By the way, as always, there'll be a link to the full written review in the description and links to my social media channels, the Discord channel, stuff like that. If you have any questions or remarks, make sure to leave a comment down below and I'll do my best to respond. And that's about it for this video, guys. So if you liked it, give it a like, Parfam audiophile style. And if you're new to the channel and want to see more reviews like this one in the future, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And until next time, I'll see you later.